Hello fellow brawlers, I'm KairosTime and I'm feeling a little lazy today. I'm sitting down instead of standing up and it's time to brawl. So guys, here's today's video. We're going to talk about Rico. Now, he recently got a buff and we'll go ahead and slap some gameplay over here. I got to tell you a story about this gameplay here, okay? So I was saying to myself, you know what, Rico got a buff. I'm going to go play him and see how he does. I played him in Gem Grab. I lost like 25 trophies in like a half an hour. I played him in Brawl on a map that he was pretty decent at. Lost another like 25 trophies in another half an hour. And at this point I'm like, oh my gosh, is Rico terrible? Is he awful? Am I terrible? Are the randoms terrible? What is going on here? I knew the Gem Grab. The Gem Grab map used to be one of Rico's best maps to play. And obviously didn't do too well. Brawl, you know, I'll be honest, it wasn't probably the best map to play him on. I wouldn't consider myself to be like the best Rico in the world, not by any means or anything like that, but I consider myself to be a good Rico. I love playing Rico. He's one of my favorite brawlers to play when he's actually decent. And so, anyway, then comes Heist, and I'm like, well, I'll play a little bit of Heist. I play a match, we get crushed. I play another match, we get crushed, and at this point I'm like, well, am I ever going to be able to push my Rico up back to 500? Because here I am at like 450 trophies. And then I get a couple of teammates that are pretty decent. We play for a little while and it's going pretty well. And then they lose and I play with randoms, guys, just so you guys know. This by the way, this is a little bit more of a rant video. This isn't my typical video here. This is me talking about Rico and why I think although he's stronger since his buff, he needs a rework. Anyway, so I'm playing in playing in Heist, and I get a couple of other teammates, and these teammates are like really solid. It's a Colt and a Bow. That's the gameplay that's going on right here. We have a couple of losses here and there, but like aside from like 2 or 3 losses, we end up having like 15, 20, somewhere around there. I didn't keep track, but like a ton of wins. We just got my Rico from like 450 all the way up to like 530 or something like that with these guys. After playing with Rico, here's the deal with Rico, and this has been an issue with Rico for a very long time, since before Brawl Stars was even released globally. Okay, let me tell you the history of Rico is that he went from being like, you know, the game was first released in beta and people were like, Rico, who's this brawler? He kind of sucks. Like, why he's so squishy? He doesn't deal as much damage as Colt. Like, why is he good? Then people learned how to bounce his shots, and all of a sudden, he went from being like a terrible brawler to being like the best brawler in the game without any like significant buffs or anything like that. And the reason why is because the way that the maps were, there were all these walls and all these corners, and he offered so much control, and people could not escape him. A skilled Rico just crushed the meta. And Supercell like tried balancing a few different ways, and it was very like flip-floppy, going from basically like being totally OP to like being one of the worst brawlers in the game. Then they'd like make one small tweak and we went back to being completely OP. And so it was like, okay, well, what do we do? They kind of just like let Rico be, and he just dominated the meta, especially Gem Grab, for a ridiculous amount of time. This is way before the game was even released in global. Now, come a month before the game does get released globally, what Brawl Stars does, you know, we had the whole like portrait to landscape switch over, and that felt like really awful. It didn't feel awful. It just took some getting used to really understand how it worked out. Then what happened with that all the brawlers moving faster and everything like that, and all their shots were actually increased in size to make the transition from portrait down to landscape a little bit make more sense. Then what Supercell did a month before the game was released globally is they actually expanded the width of all of the maps, all of the 3v3 maps by 4 tiles. Now that does not sound like much, but let's hear from my friend on how that actually impacted things. According to my research, Rico's usability decreased by 95%. He went from being one of the best brawlers in the game to being the worst. Thank you, Stewie McBeaker. I know that your numbers never lie. Rico seriously just like plummeted in his viability. The 2 extra tiles on both sides of the map totally shaped it just totally changed things. Rico no longer had extra walls to like bounce things off. It was more difficult for him to actually like make attack around corners and things like that. And it was very much like it changed a lot of different things, but Rico specifically he just got hit so hard with that one change to the maps. It was really interesting to see that, actually, because it was like all the maps were made to like be decent for Rico, and then all of a sudden Rico, like they just like expanded some things, and some of the maps were still decent to play with Rico, but like he was not the powerhouse that he was before. So now we come to this update where we had Rico got a buff. He got his damage, his super, and his regular attack damage was increased, and also his star power damage was also increased. And I'm playing him on maps that he was so good. He was so good at Deep Siege. And yesterday I went on a pretty bad loss streak with him. Now, granted, I was playing with randoms. Also, my Rico skills were a little rusty, but the way that the walls have changed and the way that like brawlers have a little bit of that extra space for them to run away, Rico just didn't feel good. He did not feel good. And to me, the damage boost was not what Rico needed. It was not. Rico, to me, because like you have Colt and you have Rico, and Rico is basically like a lesser version of Colt if you're gonna straight shot at players. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to play Rico decently, you have to have the map has to be catered to him. It has to be like a long ranged or like one where there's lots of walls where you can bounce shots off of, and that's where this gameplay going on right here, where we're having win after win after win after win, really works out, because we're playing against randoms. We have a decent team comp, and the only randoms that really give us an issue are if we end up facing like a Brock or a Piper on the same map. And the only reason why they're an issue is because they outrange Rico, they outrange Bo, and they outrange Colt. So those were struggles, but other than them, we just crushed people just because we had longer range, and we had pretty good, you know, decent DPS. Also, my teammates were really fantastic. The Colt that we were playing with, he was at like 400 trophies or something like that, and we brought him to like 450. Like, you know, props to him. He played very decently for his trophy level. Like, I was pretty impressed. So, after playing with him, after messing around with him post-buff, he's stronger. I still think he needs a rework. Or maybe not necessarily a rework. I want him to offer more control. I want him to be able to bounce shots. I don't want him to be like I don't want him to be the terror that he was before, unbalanceable, but I want him to have longer range. It was interesting because Rico, way back when, actually had an equally long range to like Piper, okay? He's currently, I think, 2/3 tiles shorter range than Piper, or like an entire third tile shorter, something like that. But he was equally as long, and what Supercell did is they nerfed his range so that it was slower, or what it was lower, but then they made it so that whenever his shots bounced off of walls, he would get increased range. Very interesting change to Rico, and I really liked it. The problem is with the increased width in maps is that Rico just, it doesn't matter. He gets that extra range, but he has to move 2 tiles in order for him to actually utilize that extra range from the walls, and it just doesn't work out for him. And so what I really think that Supercell should do, this is a very roundabout way of talking about what I think Rico needs, and I think that they should, either they could decrease his damage, or they could leave his damage the same right now. Whatever it is, they can even leave his base damage, but what they need to do is they need to make it so that every time his shot bounces off of walls, it goes to an entire 2 tiles longer. Okay, that's how it, when they remade Rico, that's how it originally was, and it was way too overwhelming. And then they changed all the maps, and then Rico was terrible. So I think they need to bring it back to that point. And now that we have the wider maps, the bigger angled areas, and that Rico really seems to struggle at, I don't want him to be so meta, like specific. I don't want him to only be good on like a few maps that are very long range. He's good on maps that are long range, where he outranges brawlers, but like in those maps, like there's Piper and Brock, then he can outrange him, and then he really struggles because he's so squishy. Oh, also as a totally side tangent, I still think that Supercell needs to improve matchmaking with randoms. It has improved a lot, I will say. The way that they changed it so that like if you are playing with randoms and then you jump into the queue, you're more likely to face up against randoms than against like an actual team. Love that change. I think it's fantastic. I love it. I still want an ability or a way for people to be able to choose their comps. I want them to be able to go into some sort of matchmaking and say, hey, we need a gem carrier. There needs to be some, in gem grab specifically, there needs to be some sort of system in place so that you will have a team comp that's somewhat well balanced. It is ridiculous going into gem grab and you have 3 gem carriers, or you have 3 aggro brawlers, or you don't have a gem carrier. Like, oh my gosh, that's my side tangent for me complaining about how I lost like 50 trophies yesterday, or 25 trophies in gem grab and in Brawl Ball. Oh my goodness, Brawl Ball specifically is so meta specific. Like it's so team oriented. Like Anyway, that's the one thing I wanted to talk about today. Rico, I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. I really appreciate the large list of balance changes that Supercell dropped for us, because it's really cool to see this. I think that Rico, if you are wanting to push Rico right now is an okay time. He's stronger than he was before. He's really difficult for you to master, and now, even though he got his buff, he's not much easier. He's still equally difficult. You're still going to struggle against the same types of brawlers. You might be able to take them out in like 1 ball less, or like 1 complete attack less for a few different brawlers, but he's not much easier. And I don't think that, at least for right now, I mean, unless Supercell's watching this video and they really take what I'm suggesting to heart, I don't think that Rico's going to get a change a whole lot. I wish that he would, but like, I think now's an okay time for you to push him. I think now is, and what you need to do, you need to learn 2 really important skills. Obviously, you need to learn how to attack around walls by bouncing your shots. That's obviously one skill, but the other big skill, and this is so important, especially in like Bounty or like this, I guess I didn't really do it a whole lot in this map, but the most important thing for playing Rico or the second biggest thing, is increasing his range just by standing right next to a wall. If you want to shoot to the right, you need to stand up next to the left wall and aim toward the left and shoot up, so angle your shots. And if you can learn how to aim that direction, you aim one way to shoot the other way. It reminds me of like cars, you turn left to move right. You gotta shoot left to shoot right with Rico, and if you do that, it immediately increases his range, and that's actually a huge skill that is really difficult to pull off. I still have not mastered it completely, but if you do it, it's so great in so many situations, because brawlers are like, they're used to like gauging that distance that they are away from you, but then as soon as you start doing that, all of a sudden you have this extra tile and a third longer range, and they're like, whoa, where did this extra range come from? That's a really big benefit. Obviously, if you're shooting directly to your left and then aiming directly to your right and bouncing it that way, you're only getting like about a third of a tile increase in range, so that's not really worth it very much. But the biggest help is when it's better for you, in that case, it's better for you to just like move to the left to shoot to the left. But what I'm talking about here is when you are specifically shooting toward the wall and angling it upward. That's the biggest thing. So anyway, that was a terrible description. Like I said, this video is a little bit of a rant here, but I don't know. I'm curious what you guys thought of it. It's a little bit more like podcasty, I guess. It's different. You can just put it on in the background if you want to watch the gameplay. You can. We crushed it multiple times over. Anyway, guys, Rico's a ton of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. For now, this is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in Brawl Stars.